The screen flickered, a soft, almost imperceptible hum emanating from the laptop as the room around her settled into the familiar quiet of a Tuesday evening. Outside, the last vestiges of twilight clung to the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and fading oranges, a stark contrast to the sterile blue glow illuminating her face. Sarah had always found solace in these quiet moments, the end of a long day teaching fourth graders, the mundane routine a comforting balm to a life that had, for the most part, been predictable, even idyllic. But predictability, she was about to discover, was a fragile illusion, easily shattered by the most innocuous of digital gestures. She scrolled mindlessly, the familiar faces of friends and family blurring into a mosaic of shared memories and trivial updates. A new recipe here, a vacation photo there, the gentle rhythm of everyday existence playing out on her feed. It was then that it appeared, a tiny red notification bubble perched innocently at the top of her screen, a herald of disruption masked as connection. Friend request. Sarah rarely received requests from people she didn't recognize. Her online circle was small, tightly knit, a reflection of her real-world connections. Curiosity, a gentle, almost lazy curiosity, nudged her to click. The profile picture was of a man, not young, not old, perhaps in his late 40s or early 50s. His face, framed by a neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard, held an expression that was difficult to decipher. A slight upturn of the lips that wasn't quite a smile, eyes that seemed to hold a vast, unspoken story. He wasn't overtly handsome, but there was an intensity, a quiet magnetism that held her gaze. The name underneath sent a small, unexpected shiver down her spine. Elias Thorne. The name itself felt ancient, resonant, like something pulled from an old, forgotten novel. She tried to recall if she'd ever encountered anyone named Elias, a friend of a friend, a distant acquaintance from college. Nothing. His profile was sparse, almost barren. No mutual friends, no shared groups, just a handful of public photos, mostly landscapes, devoid of human presence. It was as if he existed in a digital vacuum, a ghost in the machine. Most people would dismiss it, delete it, move on. But something about Elias Thorne, about the stark mystery of his digital footprint, held her. It wasn't a sense of danger, not yet. More like the pull of an unsolved riddle, a whisper in the quiet of the night that demanded attention. Sarah, despite her practical nature, had always been drawn to stories, to the hidden narratives that pulsed beneath the surface of ordinary lives. And this felt like the beginning of one. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the confirm button. The rational part of her mind, the part that organized lesson plans and graded papers, urged caution. Don't accept requests from strangers, Sarah. It's basic internet safety. But another part, a smaller, more impulsive part, a part she rarely indulged, felt a strange, inexplicable pull. It was a sense of foreboding, yes, but also a tantalizing whisper of the unknown, like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the drop is precipitous, but feeling an undeniable urge to peer over. With a deep breath, a breath that felt strangely significant, like crossing a threshold, she clicked. The screen refreshed. Elias Thorne was now her friend. The moment was anticlimactic, just a subtle shift in the digital landscape. No fanfare, no dramatic music. Yet, as she stared at his now accessible profile, a strange sense of unease began to curdle in her stomach. It was like she had just opened a door she never knew existed, a door to a corridor she couldn't see the end of. Days turned into a week, a quiet vigil. Elias never messaged her, never liked her posts, never commented. He was a silent presence, a digital shadow on her friend list. Sarah found herself checking his profile almost obsessively, seeking clues, explanations. The few landscape photos remained, unchanging, a rugged coastline under a stormy sky, a lone mountain peak shrouded in mist, a dense forest floor dappled with sunlight. They were beautiful, yes, but also eerily empty, devoid of life. She wondered where he lived, what he did, why he had sent a request to her, a stranger. The questions gnawed at her, a persistent hum beneath the surface of her daily life. One evening, after putting her two young daughters, Lily and Emma, to bed, their innocent giggles still echoing in the quiet house, Sarah found herself back on her laptop. The silence felt different tonight, heavier, imbued with an unspoken tension. She opened Facebook, and there it was, a new notification. Not a friend request, but a message. From Elias Thorne. Her heart gave a surprising lurch, a tiny flutter in her chest. She had anticipated this, perhaps even hoped for it. Yet the reality of it sent a jolt through her. She clicked, her breath catching in her throat. The message was short, unsettlingly so. "Sarah, I know you." That was all. 2 words. No greeting, no explanation. Just a stark, declarative statement that sent a shiver colder than any night air down her spine. Her mind raced, sifting through memories, trying to place him. Was he a parent from school? A distant relative she'd forgotten? A former student, perhaps now grown? No face matched his. No voice resonated with the name. She typed a response, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, I don't recall. Have we met?" The reply was almost instantaneous, as if he had been waiting, watching. "Not in person, but I know things about you. Things only a very few people know." The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing in on her. This wasn't a mistaken identity. This was something far more insidious. Predator? A stalker? Her instincts screamed at her to block him, to report him, to sever this unsettling connection immediately. Yet, a morbid fascination held her rooted to her chair. The curiosity, once gentle, had morphed into something darker, a primal need to understand the source of this digital invasion. "What things?" she typed, her voice a whisper in the empty room, as if speaking aloud would somehow give him more power. His next message was a single, chilling sentence. "Your father's watch. The one he wore every day. The one that stopped at 3:17 p.m. on the day he died." Sarah's breath hitched. Her father's watch. It was true. A small, antique pocket watch, a family heirloom, had indeed stopped at that precise moment on that terrible afternoon over 2 decades ago. A detail she had rarely spoken of, a private grief she carried close to her heart. How could he possibly know that? No one outside her immediate family, not even her closest friends, knew that specific detail. A cold dread began to spread through her veins, crystallizing into a terrifying certainty. This wasn't a random encounter. This man knew her, not just superficially but intimately, deeply, in a way that defied explanation. The predictable, idyllic life she had known was now cracked wide open, revealing an abyss she never knew existed. And the man who had opened it was a complete stranger, reaching out from the digital void. The quiet hum of the laptop now sounded like a low, insistent growl. The words, "Your father's watch. The one he wore every day. The one that stopped at 3:17 p.m. on the day he died," hung in the digital air, a venomous whisper that paralyzed Sarah. Her fingers, which had just trembled with a nascent fear, were now stone cold, locked in place above the keyboard. How could a complete stranger, a man named Elias Thorne from the digital ether, know such an intensely private, agonizing detail? It wasn't a Googleable fact, not something found in public records. It was a fragment of her soul, a scar carved deep by loss. Her father, Robert Miller, had been a beacon of strength, a quiet man with kind eyes and a laugh that could fill a room. His death, a sudden, brutal car accident when Sarah was just a teenager, had ripped a gaping hole in their family. The watch, a heavy, gold-plated relic passed down through generations, had been his constant companion. Sarah remembered finding it on his bedside table that fateful morning, ticking away, oblivious to the tragedy that was about to unfold. And then, later, in the chaotic aftermath, when her mother, eyes swollen red, had clutched it to her chest, whispering how it had just stopped. Exactly at 3:17 p.m., the time of the accident. A chilling, almost supernatural coincidence that had haunted their family for decades. A cold sweat pricked at Sarah's temples. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a random hacker. This was personal. Elias Thorne wasn't just observing her. He was inside her past, rifling through her deepest wounds. The calm, composed teacher she was by day evaporated, replaced by a raw, primal fear she hadn't felt since she was a child, waking up from a nightmare. "Who are you?" she typed, her voice a desperate plea even though it was only text on a screen. "How do you know this?" The reply was swift, almost dismissive of her terror. "I told you, Sarah. I know you. And I knew your father." A jolt ran through her. He knew her father? Robert Miller had been a respected architect, a man with a wide circle of acquaintances but few truly close friends outside his family. Sarah tried to conjure faces, names. None fit the image of Elias Thorne. "That's impossible," she retorted, a tremor in her voice. "My father, he died over 20 years ago. You're a stranger. I've never seen you before." "Appearances can be deceiving, Sarah," Elias wrote back. "And memory even more so. Your father had secrets. Big ones. Secrets that followed him to his grave. And now they've found you." The room spun. Secrets? Her father? The man who had been her rock, her moral compass? The thought was an affront, a desecration of his memory. Yet, the chilling accuracy of his previous statement about the watch gnawed at her certainty. What if there was truth to this madness? What if the life she believed she knew was built on a foundation of lies? "What secrets?" she demanded, a sudden, reckless urge to uncover the truth overriding her fear. She knew, even as she typed, that she was walking into a trap, but the lure of understanding this man, this connection to her father, was too strong to resist. Elias's next message was longer. A chilling narrative spun across the screen, each word a spider silk thread binding her tighter. "Your father wasn't just an architect, Sarah. He was a man tangled in something far darker, far more dangerous than blueprints and building permits. He was involved, deeply involved, with a group, a clandestine organization that operated in the shadows, moving money, manipulating markets, influencing elections. They called themselves the Weavers, because they wove intricate webs of power and control. Your father was one of their most trusted lieutenants." Sarah stared at the words, her mind refusing to compute. Her father? A shadowy operative? It was absurd, like something out of a pulp novel. He was quiet, principled, a man who spent his weekends coaching Little League and meticulously tending his rose garden. This couldn't be him. And yet, the watch, the unknown man, the terrifying certainty in Elias's tone. "This is insane," she typed, though the conviction behind the words was crumbling. "You're lying. My father was a good man, an honest man." "Oh, he was good, Sarah," Elias conceded. "At keeping secrets, the Weavers ensured that. They had their hooks in him, deep. From the moment he tried to break free, he was a dead man walking. And that accident that killed him? It was no accident." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her father's death. Not an accident, a meticulously arranged murder? The grief, always a dull ache beneath the surface, flared into an unbearable agony, laced now with a terrifying new layer of betrayal. Every memory, every comforting thought about her father's legacy, twisted into a grotesque caricature. "No," she whispered aloud, shaking her head vehemently, tears blurring her vision. "You're wrong. The police investigated. There was nothing." "The police saw what they were allowed to see," Elias countered. "The Weavers have eyes and ears everywhere. They control the narrative. They controlled your father right up until the end. He tried to warn someone. He tried to expose them. And they silenced him." Her stomach churned. The very air felt cold, thin. She thought of her mother, who had never truly recovered from her father's death, retreating into a quiet, grief-stricken shell, and her aunt, father's sister, Clara, who had always seemed to carry a burden of unspoken sorrow, a faraway look in her eyes whenever his name came up. Had they known? Or had they been equally blind, equally manipulated? "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah typed the question ragged, desperate. "What do you want?" "Justice, Sarah," Elias replied, the single word resonating with a disturbing conviction. "And for you to understand the truth. Your father confided in me. Before he died, He knew his time was running out. He entrusted me with certain information. He wanted someone to finish what he started. He continued, laying out a picture of a vast, intricate network, far-reaching and insidious, touching every facet of society. The weavers aren't just about money. They thrive on control. They manipulate elections, bribe officials, orchestrate collapses of companies, even influence geopolitical events. They are ghosts in the system, and your father wanted them brought into the light. The screen seemed to glow with a malevolent light, the words accusing, demanding. Sarah felt a terrifying shift within her. The world, once a place of order and comfort, was now a dangerous, shifting landscape. Her father, a hero, was now a tragic figure, entangled in a sinister web. And she, Sarah, the ordinary schoolteacher, was somehow now a part of it, pulled in by a digital thread spun by a stranger. He told me to find his daughter, Elias wrote. His words a chilling conclusion to this part of the revelation. He said you were strong, resourceful. He said you would understand. He said you would help me finish his work. A choked gasp escaped her lips. Finish his work? Her father's work of exposing a global conspiracy? This was insane. This was beyond anything she could comprehend. Her life, her quiet, safe, predictable life was over. It was replaced by a nightmare, one that had just begun to unfold, and she was trapped squarely in its center. A pawn in a game she didn't even know existed until now. The silence in the house was no longer comforting. It was suffocating, filled with the echoes of a shared past she never knew she had. The digital silence that followed Elias Thorne's last chilling message was deafening. He said you would help me finish his work. The words echoed in Sarah's mind. A terrifying mandate dropped into her lap by a ghost from the past and delivered by a stranger. Her quiet, predictable life as a fourth-grade teacher, a loving mother, a devoted wife, it had all shattered in an instant, replaced by the chilling reality of a clandestine world she never knew existed. She looked around her living room, at the children's drawings taped to the fridge, at the worn fabric of the sofa where she cuddled with her daughters, and it all felt suddenly alien, a fragile facade over a gaping abyss. Sleep became a distant memory. Every shadow held a sinister shape. Every creak of the old house sounded like a footstep. Her husband, David, a steady, grounded man who worked long hours as a civil engineer, noticed her distraction. "Everything all right, Han?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed with concern. Sarah would force a smile, a vague excuse about work stress, her heart pounding with the secret she carried. How could she tell him? How could she explain that his wife, the woman he loved, was now embroiled in a terrifying conspiracy involving a murdered father and a shadowy organization called the Weavers? He would think she was losing her mind. But Elias Thorne wouldn't let her forget. He resurfaced not with another cryptic message, but with a link. A single, unassuming link to a seemingly innocuous online archive of historical newspapers. Sarah hesitated, her finger hovering over the mouse, a cold dread washing over her. What more could he possibly reveal? What new layer of horror awaited her? With a deep, shaky breath, she clicked. The page loaded slowly, revealing an article from a local newspaper, dated just days after her father's death. The headline read, "Prominent architect Robert Miller dies in tragic auto accident." Below it, a grainy black and white photo of her father, smiling, vibrant, now a ghost on the digital page. Nothing seemed amiss. It was the same story she had always known, the official version. But then, Elias sent another message. "Scroll down. Look at the obituaries. Look at the name listed directly below your father's." Sarah obeyed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She scrolled. Her father's obituary was there, short, respectful, listing his accomplishments and his grieving family. And then, directly underneath it was another obituary, for a man named Arthur Vance. The details were sparse. Arthur Vance, 57, passed away suddenly on date, same as her father's death. No cause of death, no surviving family listed. Just a blank, almost clinical entry. Arthur Vance. Elias's message appeared again. Another accident on the same day. Arthur Vance was your father's closest confidant. His partner not in architecture, but in his secret life. They were trying to defect Sarah. They were trying to bring the Weavers down together. A wave of nausea washed over Sarah. Two men, both connected to her father, both dying on the same day, both in seemingly innocuous ways, yet now tainted by Elias's chilling narrative. It felt too convenient, too neatly packaged for a mere coincidence. And it made her remember something else. Arthur Vance. She had only met him once, at a company picnic when she was a little girl. A tall, quiet man with kind eyes, much like her father. She had a vague memory of him and her father whispering intensely in a corner, their faces grim, even amidst the festive atmosphere. She had dismissed it as adult business then. Now it was a terrifying piece of a much larger puzzle. They cleaned house, Elias continued, anticipating her thoughts. Anyone connected to their plan to expose the Weavers. Anyone who knew too much. They made examples. Your father was one. Arthur Vance was another. They wanted to send a message. And that message was silence. The word silence hung heavy in the air, a chilling reminder of the terror that must have consumed her father in his final days. Sarah imagined him working feverishly, trying to piece together evidence, knowing his life was on the line, trying to protect his family from the monstrous entity he was battling. The thought was unbearable, a fresh wave of grief, this time mixed with searing anger. "But what about me?" she typed, her voice raw with emotion. "Why am I still alive? Why didn't they come for me or my mother?" "Because you were just a child, Sarah," Elias explained. "A child with no knowledge, no connection to their network. You were harmless, and your mother, a grieving widow, posed no threat. They are precise, the Weavers. They eliminate threats, not innocence. But now you know, and knowing makes you a threat." The implications of his words hit her with the force of a physical blow. She had stepped, unwittingly, into the crosshairs of a ruthless, powerful organization. Her life, her daughter's lives, were suddenly in peril. The quiet hum of the laptop turned into a menacing growl, the light from the screen now a harsh, unforgiving glare. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, a desperate plea for direction in this terrifying new reality. "Your father hid things, Sarah," Elias replied. "Evidence. Information that could cripple the Weavers. He anticipated this. He was brilliant, your father. He knew they would come for him. He left a trail, a breadcrumb path for someone to follow, to finish what he couldn't. And that path leads to you." He then began to give her instructions, cryptic and precise. "There is a safe deposit box. Account number 731. At the old First National Bank building, downtown. It was your father's. Inside you will find a small, leather-bound journal. It holds the key. The first key." Sarah's mind reeled. A safe deposit box? Her father had never mentioned one. The First National Bank building was an imposing, Gothic structure, a relic from a bygone era, now largely abandoned save for a few small businesses. It had always seemed so remote, so irrelevant to her life. Now it was a terrifying destination. "How do I access it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't have the key, or the credentials." "He thought of everything, Sarah," Elias assured her. "The key is hidden, and the signature for access, it's a specific, unique phrase. A phrase only your father would use with someone he trusted implicitly." He then typed the phrase. It was indeed unique, a whimsical, slightly absurd inside joke her father had shared only with her when she was a little girl, a code for their secret adventures. A lump formed in Sarah's throat. It was undeniably her father, reaching out from beyond the grave, pulling her into his unfinished war. "The journal," Elias continued. "It will contain encrypted messages, riddles, and a map to other pieces of the puzzle, other hidden caches of information, each one building on the last, each one bringing us closer to dismantling the Weavers." The enormity of the task weighed on her, a crushing burden. She was a schoolteacher, not a spy. How could she possibly navigate this labyrinth of secrets and dangers? How could she protect her family while pursuing a vendetta decades in the making? "I can't do this," she typed, a sudden wave of despair washing over her. "I have my daughters. I can't put them in danger." "They are already in danger, Sarah," Elias countered, his tone firm, unwavering. "By virtue of your bloodline, by virtue of knowing the truth. The only way to truly protect them is to finish what your father started. To cut out the cancer that has festered for decades. Or do you want his sacrifice to be in vain? Do you want the Weavers to continue operating in the shadows, unchecked, potentially destroying countless other lives, just as they destroyed your father's?" His words were a bitter tonic, stinging but true. The thought of her father's heroic, desperate last stand, of his life being taken not by accident but by the calculated malice of a shadowy organization, ignited a spark within her. A fierce, protective anger for the man she had loved, and for the innocent lives he had tried to save. A resolve, cold and hard, began to solidify in her heart. The first step, the safe deposit box, felt like a journey into the heart of a storm. But as she stared at the screen, at the name Elias Thorne, a strange, terrible sense of purpose began to form. She was no longer just Sarah, the schoolteacher. She was Robert Miller's daughter, heir to his secrets, and now inextricably linked to his unfinished war. The web was tangled, but it was beginning to unravel, thread by terrifying thread. The old First National Bank building stood like a tombstone in the heart of downtown, its gray stone facade grim beneath the setting sun. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, the whimsical code phrase from Elias Thorne echoing in her mind. "Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true." It was a childish rhyme, a remnant of innocent days, now twisted into a password for a nightmare. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to turn back, to forget the chilling revelations, to cling to the illusion of her safe, ordinary life. But Elias's words, "Knowing makes you a threat," resonated with cold logic. The only path to safety, for her and her daughters, lay through the heart of the storm. She found the bank's dusty, forgotten side entrance, tucked away between a boarded-up storefront and a sputtering laundromat. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of old paper and neglect. A lone, elderly clerk sat behind a barred window, his face a web of wrinkles, a testament to decades spent in the silent vault. Sarah approached, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She recited the account number, her voice surprisingly steady, then uttered the bizarre, intimate phrase. The old man's eyes, dull at first, widened almost imperceptibly. He nodded slowly, then, without a word, vanished into the depths of the vault. He returned moments later with a small, worn, leather-bound journal. It felt heavy in her hands, not just with its physical weight, but with the burden of her father's unfinished legacy. Sarah thanked him, her voice a little shaky now, and hurried back to her car, the journal clutched tight to her chest. She drove straight home, the fading light of dusk mirroring the growing shadows in her soul. Once the girls were asleep, their innocent breaths a gentle rhythm in the quiet house, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, the journal open before her. The pages were filled with her father's familiar, precise handwriting, but the words were a complex tapestry of dates, names, and coded entries she couldn't immediately decipher. There were diagrams, intricate flowcharts illustrating connections between seemingly disparate corporations and individuals, all leading back to a central, ominous symbol, a stylized spider web. The Weavers, he had called them. Days bled into weeks. Sarah became a different person. By day, she was the cheerful, patient teacher. By night, she was a relentless researcher, fueled by coffee and a burning desire for truth. Elias Thorne became her shadow guide, providing cryptic hints, a phrase here, a name there, always pushing her deeper into the labyrinth. He never asked her to meet, never revealed his location, existing purely as a digital oracle. Each decoded entry in the journal revealed a new layer of the Weaver's insidious operations. Money laundering schemes disguised as philanthropic ventures, political assassinations masked as accidents, high-ranking officials blackmailed into complicity. The sheer scale of their power was staggering, terrifying. Her father had been a giant killer, trying to bring down an empire built on shadows. One entry, dated just days before his death, made her blood run cold. It described a secret meeting, a final desperate attempt by her father and Arthur Vance to gather irrefutable evidence. He mentioned a flash drive, hidden within a specific, obscure antique in an auction house notorious for its clandestine dealings. The final piece, her father had scrawled, "The leverage they won't expect." This was it. This was what Elias had been building towards. The next day, Sarah feigned a sick day from school. Dressed in nondescript clothes, her heart hammering, she made her way to the auction house, a place that reeked of old money and unspoken deals. The antique was there, a grotesque porcelain doll tucked away in a dusty display case, just as her father's journal had described. With a mixture of dread and grim determination, Sarah purchased it, her hand shaking as she paid. Back in her car, parked miles away in a desolate lot, she carefully pried open the doll's hollow head. Inside, nestled amongst cotton batting, was a tiny, unassuming flash drive. As she plugged it into her laptop, a final message from Elias Thorne appeared. "You found it. He knew you would. Now, Sarah, you have the power to expose them, to finish what your father started. The world needs to know." He then provided a string of coordinates, a remote server location, a digital dead drop. "Upload everything, then walk away, and never look back. Your work will be done, and they will pay." The decision was agonizing. She had the power, the evidence, but the risk was immense. Elias had warned her, knowing made her a threat. Uploading this data would make her a target. Her daughters, she pictured their faces, their innocent smiles, and a fierce, primal resolve hardened her. She couldn't let her father's sacrifice be in vain. She couldn't live with the knowledge of such evil festering, unchecked. With trembling fingers, she initiated the upload. The progress bar crawled, each percentage a beat of her accelerating heart. She watched as hundreds of files, encrypted documents, audio recordings, and damning photographs transferred, a torrent of truth unleashed into the digital realm. The faces of powerful politicians, renowned business tycoons, even revered public figures, now linked irrevocably to the Weavers and their dark deeds. When the transfer was complete, she deleted the original files from the flash drive, then meticulously wiped her laptop, ensuring no trace remained. She shattered the flash drive with a hammer, scattered its fragments, and then, with a profound sense of finality, she deleted Elias Thorne from her Facebook friends list. He was gone, a digital phantom who had appeared from nowhere and vanished back into the ether, leaving behind a shattered life and a terrible, undeniable purpose. The world didn't explode. No sirens wailed. No black cars pulled up to her curb. Life on the surface continued, but Sarah was irrevocably changed. She carried the weight of the truth, the knowledge of the hidden war, and the silent understanding that she had played her part. The news stories trickled in weeks later, at first subtle, then a torrent. High-profile arrests, sudden resignations, investigations launched into unexplained wealth and unethical practices. The names were familiar, names she had seen in her father's journal, names linked to the spiderweb. The Weavers were beginning to unravel. Sarah never spoke of it to anyone, not even David. The secret was too dangerous, too immense. She watched her daughters grow, cherishing their innocence, knowing that she had fought, in her own way, to protect their future from the shadows her father had battled. The Facebook friend request from a stranger had indeed changed her life, irrevocably. It had plunged her into a nightmare, but it had also given her the strength to complete a legacy, to be the daughter her father believed she could be. And as she tucked her girls into bed each night, she knew that somewhere, in the silent depths of the internet, the truth she had unleashed was still echoing, a whisper that would one day become a roar, finally bringing her father the justice he deserved. And that's the story. If you were captivated by Sarah's incredible journey, the chilling secrets she uncovered, and the powerful forces she faced, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more incredible real-life mysteries and untold stories, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next shocking revelation. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we uncover next.